Hello, I'm Alex from Barefaced, and this is a sort of how-to troubleshooting-y style video because now and then, not very often at all, someone thinks they've blown a tweeter or has some other sort of fault with their cab, and we have to do some troubleshooting, and someone may have to take some components out or test some things, so I thought I'd show you how to do it. So I am armed with some high quality equipment here, including 2 butter knives for those of you who are short of certain tools. And let me show you how things happen. So this is a cloth grill super midget. So to take off a cloth grill, you need to get these corners, this bottom corner here, out of the way, because the grill pulls up using that tab there. So let's just get this corner out of the way. And then once our metal corner clear, there we go, so that's no longer in the way of the grill, we can thread our screwdriver through the fabric tab and then pull, there we go, out it comes, the grill out. So the grills are held in by Velcro, but they also have foam tape round the edge to stop any vibrations, any buzzes, any rattles, annoyances like that, because we're dealing with a lot of sound pressure out the front here, because this is a very high output speaker, and we do not want buzzes spoiling the gig. So this foam tape is self-adhesive on one side, which is the side, obviously, that's attached to the grill. However, if this grill is in there for a long time, this tape will attempt to stick to the cab. There's really very little you can do about it, so sometimes the tape gets a bit worn or damaged on the way out. Sometimes it can require quite a lot of force to pull it out. If you are having a battle with it, try and slide something in between the foam tape and the cab, but obviously you don't want to be damaging Tolex or chipping painters on this, but it's just a question of persuading it to peel off, essentially. So once you get that broken off, you can then, I say broken as in the stiction is broken rather than anything actually being broken, deal with the tweeter, which is our potential culprit. So to undo the tweeter, we use bolts and T-nuts. We do not use wood screws. And the way a T-nut works, it is a threaded insert with 4 spikes on the back, and the threaded insert is pushed through the hole that's been machined in the front of the cab. So that's sort of cylindrical component of it with the thread on the inside. And there are 4 spikes with a flange pushing into the back of the baffle. Now it's very important to note that if you push hard on the screwdriver, so harder than needed to seat the head of the screwdriver when unscrewing them, that you can push the T-nut out and make life unnecessarily difficult. So don't do that. This is why I'm using a manual screwdriver rather than an electric drill driver, because it allows you to have a lighter touch, and if you're unfamiliar with it, then the weight of the screwdriver, the weight of the battery heavy screwdriver, electric screwdriver, can really throw you off and end up pushing out the T-nut and making life more difficult than it need be. So it's a question of more haste, less speed. Do it the slow old school way with a screwdriver and life is easier. This is a PZ2 posi drive screwdriver. You can use a similar size Phillips screwdriver, you just have to concentrate a bit more because Phillips do not seat quite so well, because these are PZ2 posi drive 2 screw heads, which are a European standard. So if you're in America, you probably don't have posi drive screwdrivers unless you have a particularly extensive toolbox. So this tweeter is also protected from buzzing by having gasket tape, very similar to this tape, on the back of it. And it's not just buzzing we're worrying about with the tweeter, there's also air leaks, because this enclosure has to be completely airtight. So there we are. Out you come, one more bolt. The woofer is held in similarly with gasket tape on the back of it. So this gasket tape does like to stick two things, even though it only has the adhesive on one side. So there is that peeling method frequently required, but just bear in mind that the tape is always stuck to the component, not the cabinet itself during manufacture. So if you are having to persuade it to peel off using a palette knife or similar, then you will have the most success if you do it by getting the knife between the cab and the tape rather than between the component and the tape. Hopefully that makes sense. So the adhesive side is attached to the back of the tweeter horn flange. So now that is not wanting to come out with fingertips. So what we would normally use here would be a paint scraper like this. So that's to protect the baffle, and then we get the screwdriver underneath. I would say talk amongst yourselves, but you're probably watching this on your own. There we go, so the paint scraper's under. Fingertips. There we go. Fingertips. Fingertips. There we go. So you can see, is a bit of a fight to get out. There we go. And here we have our tweeter. And I'll take these off here. Move that there. You can see that the tweeter is connected, there we go, with these leads onto spade connectors, so they've been crimped on, which are pushed onto these tabs. And it's very important that you maintain the matched polarity, so if you're taking them on and off, you've got to put them back on the same ones. So let's our screwdriver on those. You can use the tip of the screwdriver to just, there we go, get that moving. They have a click, so click, wiggle. Same on the other side. There we go. And you'll see that this tweeter here, one of the spade connectors is marked with red, that's your positive one, and the other one is unmarked, that's your negative one. Our current era of cabs are using red marked for positive and black for negative. Previous ones have used black and white cable, and basically whichever is the marked cable. So if it's got a black stripe on a white cable, that's positive, or if it's got a white stripe on a black cable, that's positive. So the distinctive cable is the positive one. The reason you need to get that right is to do with phase. So we've put a lot of work into designing the tweeter with lots of acoustic measurements and impedance measurements, so that the crossover that is making the tweeter and the woofer match together to make a lovely sound has been phase aligned quite precisely. And if you connect them up with reverse polarity, you will get a narrow notch, so a loss of certain frequencies where the tweeter and the woofer are both crossing over but are in opposite phase with each other, so there's a cancellation. So having changed the tweeter, that goes back in. Just as an FYI, this is a screw-on horn connection, so it's just the tweeter that's blown, and you've bought a replacement tweeter from us. If you've blown it, it's not our fault, it's your fault. We put a lot of work into making sure the crossover crosses at the right point, so it's a high pass filter protecting the tweeter from excessive low frequencies. It's got a very steep slope, so that really removes tons of lower frequency energy, and that keeps it safe in almost all situations. And there is a protection circuit in there which trips before the tweeter blows in almost all situations. Really, the only thing that seems to blow tweeters is very fast feedback spikes, which you can do if you've got your amp cranked right up and you put your bass right in front of the tweeter, and then you get that fast feedback through the energy from tweeter into strings, into pickups, and vroom, and it shoots up and you get a sudden squeal. And if it happens really fast, it will blow the tweeter, because the tweeter voice coil has very low mass, before the protection circuit trips. It's very annoying, but if you don't do that, it won't happen. We've probably had, I don't know, there's getting on for 10,000 barefaced cabs out there, something like that. I don't know how many blown tweeters we've had. A few dozen, something like that. It's not very frequent at all. It really is. Yeah, it's not many. It's not many, but I thought to make life easier, I could do this and also show you how it's done. So this is the tweeter used in the Super Midget. It's the same tweeter as used in the back of the Reality FR guitar cab, and it's also available as an optional extra sort of customization on most of our, no, all of our 10-inch models, but most of you probably don't know about that yet. And we may add it as an option on some of the other non-tweeted cabs. It's a really nice tweeter, far better than most bass cab tweeters. The other high frequency device we use is this larger, fancier beast. As I said, this is a screw-on connection, so you can unscrew it from the horn if you grip one and then grip the other and rotate them anti-clockwise versus each other. There is thread lock on there, so it's quite a tight turn initially to separate them, but then once they're moving, they come apart fine. If you're putting them back together, we've not noticed that you need thread lock if you're doing it in retrospect, but make sure they're tight. You don't want that unscrewing. This tweeter again has spades. They're a slightly different size spade connector, I believe, on this one, but whatever's is the right spade will already be in the cab wiring. And this attaches with a bolt-on connection using these bolts, so you'll need an Allen key for them. I think it's is that a 4mm hex key? It's a 4 or a 5, something around that. I believe the ones that go with IKEA furniture fit this, because they're a convenient right-angled one. So they're a little bit of a fiddle to access, but that will unbolt, so you don't have to replace the whole horn, because it's quite an expensive device. You just want to replacing the compression driver on the back of it. And then making sure that this gasket tapes on the back is still providing a full seal around the tweeter, because you do not want an air leak, because when you get air leaks, it sounds like distortion and it's really irritating. So then we get that through here. And then in that goes. Find our bolts, make sure it's lined up, get the correct screwdriver. Don't want to be doing up a PZ2 bolt with a small flathead screwdriver, that would be somewhat shonky. Let's make sure that is biting in the T-nut, and we do not want to be pushing, we just want to let the bolt pull itself in. You can see that I'm just twiddle the shaft like that, and unless you get more resistance you can take that approach. Once the bolt's all the way in and there's no way the T-nut can be pushed out, then you can put some pressure on the head to tighten it up fully. But bear in mind, this is a plastic flange. You do not need to lean on it like you're cranking up wheel nuts on a car. Have some mechanical sympathy. That's a good thought for life in general. Have some mechanical sympathy. Feel stuff. I was reading a newspaper article recently. I don't know if you've seen these. I think they're called Pop Pops. They're a bit like a sort of silicone rubber emulation of, what are those? Oh, bubble wrap. That sort of feeling of popping things. And it was saying that's been the biggest selling kids toy. It doesn't seem like a toy to me. It seems quite boring. But apparently, children nowadays are starved of tactile things. And I would say to you, because you, if you're watching this, are a bassist or a guitarist, pretty much, I would say to you that playing those instruments is really good for you as a human, because we like tactile stuff. We like sensation. You know, that's why people like doing crafts. And in the modern world, we're having a lot of that tactile sensation taken away from us. My biggest bugbear, well, no, there's many bigger bugbears, but a real bugbear of mine of late is the fact that modern cars are shifting over to touchscreens for so many things. And frankly, it's rubbish. It's absolutely rubbish, but it's cheaper, which is why the car manufacturer are doing it. And the people who buy new cars seem to like the fanciness of thinking that they're at the controls of the Starship Enterprise. And yeah, it's disappointing. We need tactile sensation. You know, it's nice to get in a car and all the buttons and knobs feel different and your fingers appreciate that. It's much more like the natural world to have that variety rather than a large sheet of glass with some sort of fake haptic feedback. So it's a shame, but with musical instruments we get that, as we do when we're working with tools. So you can see I'm now actually putting a bit of force in, but not too much. Do not underestimate your finger strength if you're playing musical instruments. If you embark chord a guitar or play bass guitar, you know, you've got pretty strong fingers. There we go. Just an FYI, if you don't happen to have a paint scraper and a screwdriver thing, you can do that unsealing detachment thing using some, you know, butter knives. Be careful, but obviously knives like this, you're not going to cut yourself open, but you can get under that edge and work that seal apart. So there we are. That is how to change a tweeter. And I shall just, hold on, let's go in this way because we haven't undone that corner there. That corner there, you can see it. I'm trying to remember what's, there we go. Grille on, perfect fit. And I've just remembered I wanted to show you how to check if a tweeter's working or not. I forgot to do that, so fortunately I've got that other tweeter out. So let me grab. It's not as easy now that Apple, in their infinite wisdom or not, have removed our 3.5mm jacks from our phones, and I presume the other phone makers are doing it more and more with things moving over to Bluetooth and stuff. But you get a phone and you get a lead like this. Phone, lead, dongle. This is just something I've been writing at the moment, so I'll just press play on that. So there shouldn't be any copyright issues because it's my bit of music. And then, so this is a 3.5mm to phono jack, because you need a phone. You could do it with another 3.5mm if these weren't so far apart. But, so then you can put the positive of one on one and the negative of the other, ground. And you can hear that upside down tweeter is making noise. Now the reason this is safe is because it's a headphone output, it's very low voltage, it's putting out lower frequencies than a tweeter likes. It doesn't matter because it's doing it at such low power. So that is a, turn it this way around so you can hear it a bit better. Let's go back to something where there's a bit more. Connection. So that is a working tweeter, and you'll hear if it's distorted. You know, it obviously sounds very thin because it's a high frequency device. It doesn't operate lower than about 1 kHz, so you can hear that it's working. So it's a nice way to check if the voice coil is completely blown, or sound is coming out, or if it's working but it's distorted sounding. So there we are, useful tip for any tweeter or high frequency device, or even mid-range speaker checking. Not that we don't use mid-range speakers in our bass cabs anymore, but we used to many years ago. So that took quite a while, but conversely, I have changed a tweeter during a video once talking to a camera, and it's only taken 20 minutes. Sometimes you may think the fault is here. So this is the back plate, this is what the crossover is mounted to, and to change this, it's a similar method, but these are wood screws. So don't strip them when you tighten them up, because the wood is relatively soft, but there's 6 of them. If you do strip out a wood screw, you can always plug the hole with a cocktail stick or a matchstick, and as long as it tightens up and grips in a similar way, you're all sorted. Even if it seems like a bodge, well, it doesn't really matter because it works. Apologies for the legs, I'm wearing shorts because I cycle to work, and it just, unless it's utterly freezing, I just wear shorts at work 'cause it's easier. I think legs are allowed in the modern world, we're not Victorians anymore. There we are, 6 of those. Again, let's get under that edge. You hear that sound? Yeah. There we go. There we go. Peel, unstick, 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 and crossover comes out like that. The leads are short because we don't want a load of lead flapping around and rattling. So if you need to replace the crossover, obviously you have to detach the leads from the back of the tweeter, which can be done if you have small enough arms and fancy cutting a bigger hole in the insulation by sticking your arm straight through and reaching to the tweeter, but it's probably easier to take the grill off and take the tweeter out and detach it there, and then take the back plate off. So in the unlikely event that you have to remove this modular backplate crossover assembly, that is how you do it, which is quite satisfyingly simple. You will think it's been glued in. It hasn't been glued in, it's just the gasket tape. It sticks, like foam sticks to things when it's not moved. If you have that foam insulation, remember when we used to add that to windows back in the 80s? When double glazing wasn't so common, you'd put that white foam tape on windows to stop drafts. And then if you didn't open the window for a long time, the window really didn't want to open because the foam tape, despite only being self-adhesive on one side, had sort of glued itself to the other side as well. It's like that, and the way to get anything that's stuck like that to release is this sort of peeling approach. So don't try and pull it straight off, just try to get a corner going, and once a corner's going, you can get it tipping off and all will be well. So there you go. That is how to change our modular backplate crossover assembly. That is also how to change a tweeter. That is how to test a tweeter and how to separate a tweeter from its associated horn. So I think my work is done. I've been Alex from Barefaced, and I am being whited out drastically by that enormous light up there, but hopefully you saw the detail on this, and that's more important than the details of my face. So goodbye, I'll see you next time.